Greetings. The following story is a true story about what I witnessed one night at work, working for a little band known as the Bloodhound Gang. You may have heard of them. They're from Pennsylvania, just like me. But this little story of mine that I'm sharing with you today involves things like alcohol and nudity and a mention of disgusting bodily fluids. So if any of that bothers you, you might want to go watch another video right now. I feel like this is where I should say this video is intended for mature audiences, but that seems a little bit ridiculous considering the immature shenanigans that occur at a Bloodhound Gang concert. 9 times out of 10, those shenanigans had me laughing my butt off. But the shenanigans that I witnessed on this night just took an odd turn that I didn't expect. Yeah, so this is the story of my one night in Paris, France with the Bloodhound Gang. I mean, it sounds romantic, but I promise you it's not. In getting ready for this video, I did a little sniffing around on the internet to see what I could find. Mostly I was looking for the name of the club. I was having a hard time finding information. In fact, I only found one video of this particular night. I'll link it in the description. You can actually see the beginning of the story I'm about to tell you. Why the person who posted that video didn't film the rest and what happened at the end, maybe YouTube took it down. It's kind of nasty. But I'll tell you from my perspective, from the merch girl's perspective, that day started off quite nice for me. I was excited. I believe this was my first time in my life being in Paris, France. And I woke up early, as I usually did, and went to the downstairs level of our tour bus, made a coffee. I believe I made a coffee or tea for our bus driver, and I just so happened to be in time for us entering the city of Paris. It's just me and the tour bus driver. He explains to me that we're coming into Paris, so I make myself comfy in the lounge with my little coffee, and I'm looking out the window. I got to see just a tiny tour of the city very comfortably, a cup of coffee in my hand. The tour bus driver, of course, knew his way around, and he's like pointing out to me. He's like, "Look, there's the Louvre." And I'm like, "Oh, the Louvre." I really need to get back to that city. I also remember arriving at that club, and I remember it was like a basement entrance on a regular like city street, like lots of shops and cafes. And it was like a basement entrance. Like I remember we had to go downstairs into the club, and over there was the stage. Back here by the entrance was the bar, and over here was my merch booth. But I do remember catering being decent, getting a good meal in me, and I recall the people from the club being fairly helpful, at least in my department. But I also recall being nervous, insecure, if you will. You see, silly little American Armstrong here, actually, this is embarrassing. I took 3 years of French in American high school. Never got a good grade in it. Don't remember much more than bonjour, comment allez-vous, un salade, un café au lait, and saying hello, how are you? A salad and a coffee with milk is not going to get you far when you're trying to sell people stuff. So I was a little nervous about tonight. Also guilty and at play in my little anxiety-filled head were like the stereotypes, the things you hear from people. I think it's really unfortunate that as an American traveling around Europe, that I often heard the French hate Americans and that they will often pretend to not be able to speak English, but they can. They just won't because they're arrogant and they hate Americans. Like I heard this a lot. And me personally, always when I worked in sales, regardless of what my product was and who I was working for, I always tried to make like a good atmosphere, like a fun atmosphere. Hey friend, how can I help you? So I was a little nervous that, what if these stupid stereotypes that people are telling me about the French are true, and tonight at my merch stand, I get treated like poo-poo. That didn't happen at all. Don't listen to stereotypes, kids. I am really delighted to say that that night, selling Bloodhound Gang merchandise in Paris, France, I was treated very well by the people there. Like, if I could reach out to any of them, if any of them happen to watch this video, first off, remind me of the name of that damn place. And second off, thank you. Thank you for being so kind. Like, really, I met a lot of really nice people. Now, granted, selling in a concert atmosphere is different than working in, like, for example, a retail shop. People's attitudes and spirits are definitely different, and that makes it easier to make a fun atmosphere or have a good time in that job. But like, I remember the first customers coming up to my booth and me being like, bonjour. And I remember a couple of them just like laughing and in straight up very good English, just being like, why are you speaking French? Are you not from America? Are you not a Bloodhound gang? No? But I remember like having a conversation with like a handful of them around my booth and mentioning that I was, you know, a little ashamed that I couldn't communicate more, like say all the numbers and remember how to say thank you, merci beaucoup, for their purchases in the proper way. Not one of them was arrogant, not one of them was rude to me, and they all told me I was doing a good job, so that was great. So from the perspective of the merch girl, the concert was going very well, and I recall the club being packed, and I recall the club being really into it. And if you've ever been to a Bloodhound Gang concert, you know that sometimes things get a little, what some would label maybe indecent, fifth grade pee-pee poo-poo humor. And oftentimes the crowd has been allowed to participate in the way of getting on stage. Now, this is where I want to clarify, I do not encourage anybody. Never just invite yourself into somebody's workplace. And especially not if there's wires and safety hazards and they didn't invite you. However, you can find plenty of videos online where the Bloodhound Gang like allowed fans to come on stage and gave them alcohol or they danced around. And there's this one song about Chasey Lane, and when the main verse comes that declares you should show them. I'm telling you, I've seen it like hundreds, not thousands of times. There's always at least a handful of girls, at least here in Europe at the concerts, that do just that. When the verse is said. People get crazy at concerts and have a good time. Let it all go. Let it all hang out. I've seen it all. But what I saw this night, I just didn't see coming. I didn't see coming, and I'm watching it from the back of the room, and I'm watching it like a full-on spectator. Like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. And I remember eventually climbing up onto my merch table to see clearly, is what's going on what I think? Is that for real? So here's how I remember it. And here's your last chance warning to get out of here if you're easily grossed out. So I remember it's towards the end of the concert. I'm thinking somewhere within like the last 3 songs. Everybody's having a good time. I'm pretty sure 90% of the audience is drunk. And a young man makes his way up on stage, which did not catch my eye because, as I just told you, not that uncommon of an occurrence. But I remember at some point, you know, like I'm standing here at my merch table and I'm talking to customers in between this giant concert going on in the background over there. And you notice when, like, the crowd is really paying attention to something or reacting. Like, I could see a lot of people reacting like, here's what I saw from my perspective. I remember climbing up onto that merch table and looking over the crowd and seeing guy number 1, if my memory serves me correctly, guy number 1 was in boxers. And he was doing his thing. He was dancing on stage. Jimmy was encouraging it. Evil Jared was disapproving quite a bit. I think we already at this point in the concert had an incident where Jared had disapproved in the way of relieving himself onto the singer. It happens. Happened. But yeah, so dude number 1, if my memory's right, was dancing in his boxers, having a blast, and dude number 2 gets up. No chicks. 2 dudes. Side note, I'm slightly nearsighted, which means I don't see so clearly when things are far away. And this was the other side of the room, but I could clearly see Within a few seconds of climbing on my merch table and focusing with my merch girl eyeballs, that dude number two was completely butt naked. So while this has my attention, that's not just something you see every day on the job. Or is it? Leave me a comment how often you see things like this when you're at work. But no, from my perspective, everybody was into it. The crowd was going crazy. The two dudes were really dancing like crazy all over the stage and seemed to be just loving the attention. And they were just like doing their thing. Like they didn't look like they were like getting in the way of the band like some people tend to do when they get on stage or being annoying. Like these dudes were dancing. They were into the music and one was naked. And I remember watching this. I'm this American. It's my first night in Paris, France, and there's this going on. Oh, France, you're adorable. Since that night, I have returned to France multiple times and worked concerts in and around Paris. This was the only night that this happened. So right, back to I'm on my merch booth, I'm watching this, it's registering to me that these are not chicks up on the stage because of that one verse and that one song. It's registering in my brain that, yeah, that dude is completely naked in front of a packed club, in front of the whole crowd, next to the band. And I have to say, from my opinion, these dudes were good dancers. As is often with the Bloodhound gang, just as quick as things get hilarious, they can get weird and they can escalate to icky real fast. I think anybody that's been to one of their concerts, at least over here in Europe, knows what I'm talking about. Evil Jared had some bladder control issues and vomit control issues. It happens. It happened. So I remember it being like the last song. Can't remember what the last song was, but I remember this dude was still on stage, still butt naked before us all, still dancing his adorable little butt off. And this is where, because of the distance, I can't really tell you how this occurred. I have my assumptions as to how this could have been encouraged and by whom. But all I know is what happened next. It's one of the most disgusting things that left me with so many questions that I've ever seen in all of the hundreds of thousands of concerts I've been to. This dude somehow ends up towards the end of that last song, or like right at the end of that last song, at the very, very front middle of the stage, with I remember him having like his arms up, like legs kind of spread, a very proud stance, if you will, arms up. I can't remember if there were fists made or maybe, like you see at concerts, devil signs. But I remember him being in this pose. But all I know is the next thing, everybody in the audience began to spit on this guy. I'm saying everybody. I'm saying I'm nearsighted and I was way far back and I could see liquid dripping off of him. It all happened so fast, and I remember like I'm on my merch booth and like it's this atmosphere we're all like into the music and yet giggling and entertained by all of the shenanigans going on stage. There's a lot of shenanigans that go on stage at Bloodhound concerts. And like I remember feeling this vibe and it went like real fast from everybody being like, woo, yeah! To, oh my God. I'm not gonna lie, it's Bloodhound concert. There were still people going, yeah! And people spitting. It doesn't end there. And this is what left me with so many questions because I mean, I see this, what I'm going to estimate at being maybe a 19 to young 20-year-old young man, butt naked on stage, putting himself towards the middle, doing this stretched out pose to allow the audience to, This is where I'm thinking they had an encore, but regardless, last concert end of the night is when I'm busiest, so I get busy. I don't watch the end. Fast forward end of the night, I'm all packed up, merch is away, business is over. think we're in the bus on our way to the next gig, and there's a conversation. I had to know what happened to this dude. And what I was told left me with so many questions. I was told that this dude was invited to, at some point towards the end there, come to the side of the stage, come to the backstage, have a few beers with us. The good person in me wants to hope my boys would have offered him a shower in that creepy shower we had. But I was told when I asked about this mysterious unicorn dancer of a man, I was told it was confirmed by a worker of the club at the door that yes, indeed, in fact, this guy, butt naked, covered in nastiness, walked out and went home, walked butt naked down the streets of Paris, France. I don't know if he appeared at this concert with no clothes on. I imagine when you make that decision to get on a stage and strip down, it's probably hard to keep track of where those clothes end up in such a chaotic atmosphere, if you will. So many questions. I have so many questions. Who was he? Why? I mean, I understand the desire to get up on stage. And I understand the possibility that maybe he was even invited. But why the decision to get butt naked, Paris, France? And then, oh, buddy, what was that at the end? Even if one of my boys encouraged it, what are you doing, man? That was unbelievable. That guy was a big part of that show that night, in my opinion. And I will never, ever, ever forget it. Or him. That said, I do not recommend anybody out there duplicate this behavior. I really do hope that guy made it home safe and is living his best life. And I really do hope that you enjoyed my silly little story. There'll be more to come soon. If you did enjoy it, click like and let me know. If you're new here and you enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe and ring the bell and let you know when I uploaded something new. Trying to do it every week. Thanks again for checking in and listening to my silly little story. I'll add it to my Storytime playlist you can find on my channel. Until the next time, my friends, make sure you take care of yourself.